Are you an ambitious leader ready to break through limiting beliefs, align with your purpose, and thrive in your career without sacrificing your well-being or postponing your true desires? I'm Diana Ordonez, certified high-performance coach and your host. Each week, we'll dive into actionable insights and research-based strategies to help you unlock clarity, build unshakable confidence, and take courageous action toward a life of impact and fulfillment. If you're ready to overcome fear, embrace growth, and step boldly into your next level, you're in the right place. Let's create a life filled with courage and purpose together. Welcome back, everybody, to the Courage and Purpose podcast. Today, I am joined by Karen Howard, founder and coach of Jewelry Appraisers Coach. I'm excited to speak with her because she had a lot of insightful information when we met about this very niche career path. And she had such an interesting story. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs or anybody that has pursued a higher leadership position in a corporate environment will relate to some of the things that she's going to talk about, just shifts and turns and transitions in careers and just being faced with life's challenges and how to overcome them to continue to lead in industry. I invited Karen to share her insights. And so, Karen, why don't you tell us, how does one come to be a jewelry appraiser?
Thank you very much, Diana, for having me. My story is probably a little bit different than the average jewelry appraiser because most of them have family in the business already, whereas I came into it totally cold, didn't even know what that was, didn't know what a gemologist was. I just happened to get a job in a gift store one day. It was a combination of a gift and jewelry store, and the owner happened to be a gemologist. One day, it's quiet in the store. He's grading some diamonds and invites me back to see what he's doing and says, okay, what do you think? And I just sat there and went, well, I think this one's darker, this one, blah, blah. No knowledge, no training, no nothing. And he goes, okay, you need to be a gemologist. You need to be a diamond grader. This is your role because you have a natural eye for doing this. Now, we can train our eyes to do it, but it is much easier when you already can do it without knowing what you're doing. And that was how I sort of fell into it. I didn't know what a gemologist was after a few years of studying because I'm going to date myself. When I studied in Canada, the only way I could study was to go into Toronto a couple of nights a week or through correspondence. And I chose to do it through correspondence because going into Toronto was not an option at that time. So it took a few years to study. It's a very intensive course. Then I went on to become a diamond grader, take that course, and then I took a valuation science course, which got me into the jewelry appraising. And actually, the main reason I went that way was because I wanted to be able to work from home with small kids. And that was one way I could do it. I could work part-time as a jewelry appraiser, set my own hours, and still be home, when the kids got out of school, etc. So that was how I sort of fell into it. I always say I fell into it because I didn't know anything about it.
Well, if it's not your first time listening in on the podcast, I always say everything happens for a reason. So I firmly believe that our gifts lead us in different directions. I'd love to hear about what led you to this gift shop role to begin with.
When I was a teenager, I had a job in a department store. And one of the departments I worked in and helped run was the gift department. I had developed an illness. I just got married, was diagnosed with Crohn's, had to stop working. And when I decided, okay, let's get a part-time job. I can't work full-time right now, but maybe let me see if I can find a part-time job. And I just walked into this gift jewelry store and had a conversation with the owner. And by the time I got home, I got a phone call and said, okay, so are you starting with me tomorrow? And that was it. It was conversation. It didn't even feel like an interview. So it just naturally fell into place, which started my career as a gemologist.
Originally, I recall from our last conversation, you went to school for business, right? And so what was your view of your career when you pursued a degree in business?
Well, my business is based on opening your own store. It was in the fashion industry, but I hadn't thought about the accessory end of the fashion industry. I always enjoyed business. So that was what I did in my college career in the business course. And part of my course was to actually, on paper, open a store. So all of the things that you had to do to open a business, run a business for a year. It put me in good stead for being an entrepreneur later in life.
Right.
My background is running business.
Right. And I know for me as a product management director who had gone pretty far into that career path, feeling like I never pursued what was really calling to me as far as helping people with their careers, I realized later, at first, that it felt like, oh my gosh, how much time I wasted pursuing this other thing that felt interesting at the time, but wasn't what I truly felt called to do. And then later, I remember reframing that, realizing how much of what I learned in that career served me when I ultimately decided to have my own coaching business. And I heard that theme in what you talked about too, in that nothing is ever lost. Whatever you feel pulled to at the time will later serve you where you ultimately end up. I think when people think about transitioning in careers and making drastic changes in industry or roles, a lot of the hang up is I've never done anything like that, or I've already spent so much time in my education or career doing something completely different. I can't shift paths at this point. And I've just found that everything happens for a reason. And so much of what we do is never wasted. Where have you found that to be true in your career now? I know you said it served you when you started your own business. Maybe do you have some examples of some of the ways that you were able to overcome some challenges that you wouldn't have otherwise?
Well, it's interesting because as you were talking, all of a sudden it clicked into my brain that when I was in college, I had to do a thesis project. It was on antique fashion. Fashion through the ages was what it was called. Then when I had to do my thesis for my valuation science class, I did how jewelry and fashion related through the ages. And then my niche, as I became appraiser, was all about antique jewelry and estate jewelry and the eras. And I went, okay, there's a theme all the way through my career. I always had that history I enjoyed. So funny how I hadn't even thought about that myself until you were talking. So,
I love that. Also, when I finally made the decision to leave corporate, I remember one of the questions I had for myself was, what is my purpose? What is it that I actually am called to do? And it wasn't really that clear to me in the moment. It was kind of just pursuing the next thing that felt interesting or uniquely passionate for me. A lot of times it's like when you are trying to think about your purpose or your calling, I find that it sometimes is after the fact, right? You just kind of pursue these passions and unique interests to you. And then if you look back, you can kind of see the themes underneath all the things that you've done. I think that's what you've uncovered here.
and I guess too, when I started as a gemologist, if that gemologist had not said you should do this for a living, you're a natural at it, would I have gone down that path? No, because I didn't know anything about it. When I went home and said to my husband, I think I'd like to do this, I was blessed that he went, go for it. So that part of it too is having someone in your corner saying, yeah, you know, keep going, keep going. Okay, it's hard, keep going. Don't ask me, I don't understand it, just keep going. There's some definite things that you do think about later that you're not thinking about at the time because, yeah, there's nowhere in my background that I should be a gemologist.
Yeah. I love that you listened, right? It's one thing for someone to see the talent or the skill in you, but it sounds like you also had to be open to receive that and do something with it. What do you think allowed you to take that leap of faith and trust in that?
I think that's because generally I keep myself open to possibilities. There's too much out there in life. And if you close off and don't leave yourself open, you miss too much. And there are times when you sort of go, maybe not now, but maybe down the
Mhm.
road. That's how I transitioned into my coaching career because it wasn't right at one point in my life, but it became what I wanted to do. It's an open possibility. And you just never know where that's going to come from or who it's going to come from. So yeah, it's just been how I am.
Yeah,
Sorry,
it,
what else? Yeah, that one.
I guess part of it is personality. There's some aspects to that that's personality. If you look at the personality tests and things like that. But I also think there are certain themes in what you're saying, like you say to yourself, this is a possibility. There's, language that you use that allow you to kind of go into a difficult transition like that. You say, this is an opportunity as opposed to this is a big risk. People say all sorts of things to talk themselves out of
Um,
opportunities.
and I did too. Like for a long time when I first started, even as a gemologist and an appraiser, and I have this business going, I kept saying, but why would anyone come to me? I'm just this small fry in a small town in southern Ontario, and pushing myself to go to conferences to meet other people in the industry that I needed to meet to make connections. But it would be always like, oh, but why would they want to talk to me? Like, who am I? And yet I found the more I pushed myself out there, the more I met super interesting people and became friends with a lot of them. Still to this day have these friends. If I had not pushed myself through that think, who am I to do this, to even to realize that they're just people to think with their insecurities, etc., then, my expression is put your big girl panties on and just go. So that's it.
Thank you for being so vulnerable to share that because that was definitely one of my initial limiting beliefs going into coaching. Who am I, right? Who am I to coach anyone on this? What you talked about is really getting comfortable with being uncomfortable. I need to meet more people. And that to me was also very uncomfortable as someone that struggled with social anxiety for most of my life. It sounds like it was a just do it. It doesn't feel good to do it, but I know on the other side of it is something greater. Therefore, I'm called by that. And we're going to, like you said, put our big girl panties on and do the uncomfortable thing. And I think there's a lot of courage in that too. A lot of what you're saying is about seeing opportunity and broadening your concept of what is out there for you as opposed to constricting and staying where you were.
Yeah, part of my career as a gemologist was also teaching. I started teaching through correspondence students. That was easy because if I didn't understand their answers that they were sending me, I had time to look it up. But then I transitioned into teaching in person. And I really had to know what I was talking about. But I had a gentleman who was very well known in my industry, who was a worldwide speaker, looked at me one day and said, Karen, you need to start sharing your knowledge. And I went, what do I have to share? He goes, you have more knowledge than the person you're going to teach. And so I always keep that in my mind, even still, that I hear his voice saying that when I'm coaching. It's the same thing. These people need whatever knowledge I have to help them get to their next level. I've been there, I've done the walk. So let me get them where they need to go.
I love that. That was definitely one of the things I found really helpful when I started to get in my head and my ego about who am I? Am I saying the right thing? Do I know the right thing? It was like transitioning into the person that I am going to serve. And you're right. There's always someone a few steps behind that doesn't have the knowledge you have. At the time, I also thought if everyone could be a coach, everyone would be. I kind of just thought this was everyone's ideal career because I felt so lucky to be doing it that I was like, everybody would be doing this. Over the years, I started to find out that actually no, not everybody is called to do the thing that and you feel lucky because it is a calling and it is something that comes more natural and you find joy in it. And that is why you do it, not because, you know, everybody doesn't feel the same. You are uniquely like created for the thing that you ultimately pursue. And I love what you said about bringing that into your coaching now is like there is a way to serve people. Because I know when we spoke, you talked about how that is a big central part of what you do, what keeps you really motivated to keep showing up. you mentioned the Crohn's disease, and that has to be so challenging. Why don't you talk about what that means for those of us that have never heard of how that impacts you? Because it sounds like that was what ultimately made you transition into a part-time role, which then led you where you are today, right?
Yeah, and it's a disease I still suffer from. There is no cure for Crohn's. It is an intestinal disease. If you cannot keep it under control, and it's usually controlled by medication and how you eat, unfortunately, how one person can handle Crohn's and what they can eat is not the same as the next person. And so there's no set rules for it. There are guidelines, and what you can eat one day, you may not be able to eat the next day. It can be extremely painful. You can end up in the hospital quite regularly with it. If it's under control, which I'm, touch wood, I've been really blessed. It's been managed for the last 25 years through medication. They have to change my medication quite regularly because the body gets used to the medication. So every few years, we have to figure out what else can I use. But basically, it is your body fighting itself. It's always at war. And it's exhausting because no matter what you're doing outside of it, it is something that your body is still fighting, even though you're not aware of it. It's not a pleasant, I wouldn't wish it on anyone, not even my worst enemy. So yeah, I'm been blessed with it. I have not had some of the debilitating problems that can come with it. The unfortunate thing is there are so many other issues that come along with Crohn's. As soon as you have that, you usually end up with other diseases that also can't be cured. Right now I have 3 autoimmune diseases out of 4. And I'm hoping I don't get the 4th. But hey, I'm still moving, I'm still here, I'm still going. That's the way I look at it. I just keep my head down and keep going.
Yeah. I heard you say that earlier today too.
I mean, the alternative is, what do I do? Curl up and not do anything with my life for the rest of it? No, that's not an alternative to me. I may be a lot slower in what I do now, but I'm still moving, so it's okay.
I want to give you an opportunity to share your story. I know when I lost my husband, I had a pastor who said something to me like, you still choose to wake up every day and have faith, show up for your daughter and run and build this career. I said to him, I didn't have a choice. But then he said, actually, no, you do. There are plenty of people that make that choice. It struck me because I kind of didn't maybe honor that in me. I didn't see it like a choice. And then I realized, oh, that's right. There are people that make a different choice. And for me, it didn't feel like a choice because I had something that I was running towards. I wasn't trying to avoid my past necessarily, but I was trying to build a future. And I looked at it like a privilege of he doesn't get to. As a way to honor him, now I will make the most of what I was given as a gift. I want to give you the opportunity to share your story of loss. I'm wondering if any of my story might resonate with you or if you had a different experience in that.
Yeah, after having my appraisal business for 22 years, my husband took ill. And I did palliative care for 6 months at home with him. When he came home, we were given a week to a month. I managed to stretch it out for 6 months before he passed away. In that time, because I work from home, now I can't work because I'm doing 24/7 care. So my business just started to die off. A few people contacted me and I managed to fit them in when I could. Then I went through some major surgery myself. And then 6 months later, my mom passed away and I had been her caregiver as well. So at that point, I sort of went, okay, what do I want to do? My business is now almost non-existent because I haven't been able to work on it. Do I want to continue with that? Is that the grind I want to keep? Because when you're appraising, it can be that you have a ton of things come in at once and you've got to get it done for these clients. And I went, do I really want to do that going forward? No, I don't think I do. I want to honor that. I still want to be part of the industry that's given me so much. But that was when I started thinking about the students that I had taught to be appraisers and all the questions they had about business that they didn't seem to know. I went, okay, maybe that's the way I need to look at how would I want my life to look? What is my vision for my life going forward? And because I had been married for 41 years. So more than half my lifetime, I'd been with the same partner. What do I want it to look like? And I wanted to be able to spend more time with my grandkids because I have three fairly young ones that I see a lot. I want to be able to still help my family if they need it, financially. So I didn't want to stop working. I didn't want to just sit and twiddle my thumbs. That's not who I am. And so that was when I looked at okay, coaching allows me to schedule myself the way I want. So that's when I started coaching and I coached a few and then I went, I need to do more to make sure I'm giving them the best quality. So the past year, while I've been doing a bit of coaching, I've been doing a lot of studying as well. And can say I just finished my book. It's going for its first edit this week. So yeah, I'm quite proud of the fact that I got through writing a book too.
Congratulations. That's awesome. I know it had to be so difficult, especially after 40 years married and struggling with your own illness, finding out within 6 months he was ill and losing him.
Yeah, it was very dramatic for us because in January, we knew he wasn't feeling good, but he wasn't that ill, and went into the hospital at the end of February and came out on March 23rd with that diagnosis. So, yeah, it was very quick. Unfortunately, he had had this illness and hadn't realized how bad he was. And so by the time they diagnosed him, he was already in stage 4 coronary heart disease. So, yeah. Nothing at that point you could do. So yeah. And because he wanted, the last thing I could do for him was honor his wish to be at home. And so that was what I did as long as I could. These last 6 weeks, he was in palliative care because I had gotten sick. So he recognized that fact. He was still cognitive enough to recognize the fact that I was getting ill. So he asked to be put into the hospital at that point.
As you're going through so many life challenges, how do you make long-term decisions, short-term decisions? Obviously, we all have our careers, and then it's like when we lose our health or a loved one loses their health, everything feels secondary. Walk us through, for anybody walking that journey, what does that look like? How do you make decisions about what do I do today? What do I do next month?
For me, maybe because we had a pretty finite limit, and yes, it stretched on longer than we had been originally given, but you don't really think ahead. It is,
Mm.
okay, what do I need to do today? What do we need? What did I need to do to keep them comfortable? What did I need to do to keep us fed? What did I need to do to make the bills? That was it. That was my whole world. And that's what do I do to keep me sane is the other part of that. And for me, that was usually reading and one good friend that I talked to absolutely every night. Then as I transitioned out of that after he passed away, it was because I'd had a business and now didn't really have one anymore. It was, as I said, it was okay, I don't, but okay, I can start sort of rebuilding that, or maybe I don't make any decisions for a year. And
Mm.
that's almost about what I did. I really took the time to decide how I wanted my life to look. Having been in the business for 22 years, I sort of started to get where I was maybe not as excited. My eyes were
Mm.
aging the whole bit. So it really was just sitting and thinking about how I wanted it to be, what did I want? Did I want to work? Yeah, that was the first question. Do I want to work? Yeah. And I went, after a few weeks, because I had surgery and I couldn't do anything. I said, yeah, I can't do this for the rest of my life. That's not who I am. And so those kinds of questions have to get answered, and they don't come easy and they don't come quickly. And you just have to realize that it's going to take time. I took time the first year just to travel. Some of it was for still keeping my fingers in my work, traveled to conferences, but I also just did vacations where I went away for a week and saw some place I wanted to see that I hadn't been able to, or unexpectedly got invited with my daughter and son-in-law and their three boys to go to Costa Rica. Okay, I can do that. So things like that, I took the time for me to recharge and figure out where I wanted to go.
Yeah, it's so important because what you're describing is being in that survival mode. It's just one moment to the next. Just need to make sure the bills are paid, need to make sure that I get through the day. And that state of survival does put our nervous system in this fight or flight state where you need that ability to come back and rest. And even the things that you were doing to keep your sanity are so important. And I know that survival mode does play a big role in getting us to a point where we aren't able to access our creativity and our passion and our ability to think very rationally because we're always trying to get through the day as opposed to having the peace to really think. And taking time is so important. The very first book I read when I was trying to figure out how did I get here? How did I get this burnt out? How did I get to the point where I'm just feeling like every day is routine chaos? It was The One Thing. And in The One Thing, they reference Think and Grow Rich, which I later also read. But the thing that they really focus on is taking the time out of your day to think, reflect, and decide what is really important and what do I want to really accomplish with this and what is going to get me there. And I think it's not necessarily the first thing we think to do when we're in that state, right?
One of the things that helped me during that time was I had started journaling and meditating. I meditated for years, but I had started journaling and I kept my journals. I might journal every morning, first coffee in the morning kind of thing. I might put, okay, I need to get these three things done today. And they didn't have to be big things. They were just three things that need to be done. It could have been clean the house. It didn't matter. It just to focus my brain on something. But then what I would do is write about how I was feeling, how my body was, etc. Then the next day I would start off with, okay, I accomplished all this. Look at that was a good day. And that sort of helped me transition along the way, along the path. I still do meditation. I don't journal as much as I should, but I still do the meditation because it calms the mind and allows me to calm myself before I get out of bed. And I started doing meditation with my illness, so it's ingrained in my body.
Yeah, it's so valuable. I also journaled a lot, especially through the loss and probably for a few years after. And it's interesting when we start to feel better, how we let go of the habits that helped us feel better.
I know.
It's important because most of us have a lot of thoughts, and if we don't write them down, we're probably not paying attention to them. And so I find it helpful to kind of monitor where is my mind at. And also, I love what you did. You did the two things that are really helpful for starting your day, which is one, start off with acknowledging your wins, and two, setting the intention. What do I want to really focus on today? And just honoring that sometimes they're going to be smaller things and other times bigger things. One of the things that journaling allowed me to do was also to reframe my thinking, start the day with gratitude. And there's so much to be grateful for. When you lose somebody, you realize how much they lost, how much you have. I had never before relished in the gratitude for just being able to look at my daughter's face and her smile and hear her giggles and just be able to, my late husband unfortunately died on a ventilator. And I just like the ability to fill my lungs, like the ability to get up. We spent 3 weeks laying in a hospital bed, and just like the ability to move my body, the ability to see the sunlight. It's just like they take so much for granted. And I think that also is what got my mind out of the little things. When you think about career transitions and what am I going to do for work and what am I really good at and what does the market really want? And these are important questions. I'm not going to say they aren't, but when you realize you could be gone tomorrow, you start honoring those little parts of yourself that are saying to you, like, this is really what is important to you. This is what lights you up. This is the thing that is going to keep you inspired and that you really want to pursue. So much of my early career was driven by what can I be successful at so I can provide the lifestyle I wanted for my daughter. And now it's more like, how can I feel and do my best? And I trust that if I feel and do my best and I'm bringing my passion and my energy, my everything to the table, I will be successful and therefore have the lifestyle. Because I ended up just so far from where I wanted to be. I'm wondering how much of that resonates for your journey.
Yeah, I guess I was blessed because I'm so much older than you, and my kids are so much older. And having gone through the process we have in the last couple of years with the deaths, my son moved back home with me because they wanted to make sure mom was going to be okay, which is
Yeah.
lovely. It's lovely having him here, but at the same time, it's been interesting to hear his perspective of mom as he was growing up because I had the business and I ran the business. We were talking one day and he said, yeah, but mom, like you've always put everybody else before you. He said, even when we were kids, you were always on the go, always doing stuff for us, doing stuff for dad. He said, it's time you did stuff for you. And I went, oh, that's kind of an interesting perception I hadn't thought of. It's kind of, you just did what you had to do, as you say, like we are doing what we think we need to do to pay the bills and etc. So that really resonates with me having to stop and think, what do I want for me? Because I don't have to think about all of them in that way anymore. They're grown up. My youngest is going to be 30 next week. So it's now, okay, what do I want? I think a lot of females think that. It's a weird thing for us to put ourselves first and to say, what do I want in life? I'm still young enough to think I'm going to live a few years. So it's like, okay, what do I want for the next 10, 15, 20 years? What I want it to look like, as long as I can stay reasonably healthy and keep going. So it was like, I'm going to get my passport renewed. And when I had it done 10 years ago, I figured that was the last one. And I'm going, yeah, we're going to go for another 10 years, So things change and you have to be open to the change and understand that the path, and I think it was more my generation, the path was, okay, you start your career and you're just going to go this way. Whereas kids today, they verge all the time. And we sort of go as, and my generation go, well, can't they stick with anything? It's not that. There's just so many more opportunities. And they know that they may have to change careers 3, 4, 8 times. So they seem to be more open to it than my generation was. We were
Hmm.
taught you started your job and that's where you were for the next 40 years.
I definitely love your mindset because it's so empowered. It's coming from this empowered place of believing that you can decide what you want and create it.
I think it also comes from, I think, age, wisdom and age, as you get to the stage where, yeah, I may not look the way I want anymore. My body's, with drugs, etc., is not the shape I would like it to be. But you know what? If that's what people like about me or don't like about me, well, that's their problem and not mine. And so if I'm going to go for a coaching career, then it's only me that can create it. No one else can do it for me. And it's my life. I have to take charge of it and believe I can do it. Get out of my own way and allow it to happen because sometimes we do that. We put our own roadblocks up. Why can't I do this? Why shouldn't I do this? Why should I reach out to this large company that I'd like to reach out to? Oh my God, they don't even know who I am. No, and your voices start going. So sometimes you just have to get out of the way and I'm going to go for it anyway.
I love that. Yeah.
And what's the worst thing that can happen? They'll say no. Is
Yeah.
that going to kill me? No. Okay, that door is closed. There's going to be another one open. So I think that is to a certain extent something that happens when you've had enough doors slammed in your face as you age, you just go, okay, there's going to be another path that opens up.
Yeah.
And some people are lucky to learn that early, but some of us, it takes a little longer.
When you say the door closed, another one will open, it does go back about the belief that that door closed because another door is going to open. Like it was meant to be that way. That one wasn't for me because there is another opportunity that is for me that's on the other side. But you're right. We do, in essence, self-sabotage by not believing. It's in the belief. Because if you are staring at the closed door, you're gonna miss the open one.
As I always say, you have to knock on the other door and have it open. If we get stuck staring at the closed door, the opportunities are there, but if we aren't open to seeing them, if we let our voices tell us that we're not good enough, like why this little person from Guelph? If I had let that stop me, I wouldn't have had the career I had. I still remember one day I'd been to a conference in England and sat beside someone from Hong Kong. We had a lovely discussion, very interesting, very different, because our cultures are quite different. He's still a good friend, but when I came home, one day I'm on my phone texting, and my husband goes, "Who are you texting?" I said, "Oh, I was talking to Dominic in Hong Kong, and then I was talking to Kim in Australia, and then I was talking," and I kept saying, but I was going around the world with all these people I've met over the years. He goes, "Okay, it's not even 9 o'clock in the morning, and you've traveled the world." But if I hadn't been open to go and do what I was doing, would I've met these people? No. And so it's again, being open to the possibilities, the limitless possibilities. If you limit
Yeah.
yourself, then that's where you stay.
What I heard is kind of like this internal dialogue, right? The limiting belief is coming up for you, and you're kind of like, well, that's fine. Even if that were true, I'm going to do it anyway. Even if it might not work out, I'm going to do it anyway. And it's like sometimes when we feel these thoughts come up, we want to shut them down. And the more we resist it, the more we are unable to overcome them. We stay stuck there because it just wants to be heard. And so you're like, okay, I heard you and I'm going to do it anyway.
And I like the way you put that. For me, I hear the voice, okay, what's the worst thing that's going to happen if that happens to me? What is the absolute worst thing? And I guess having gone through illness and death, it's like, will I still wake up in the morning? Will I still have food in my house and a roof over my head? I will. So therefore, go away.
Yeah, I do think that when you lose someone close to you at a young age, it is a blessing in that you realize if the worst that can happen is not death, then we can deal with it, right? It just reframes everything to look so much smaller until you lose your life. You still have hope. There's still something that can be done. Juan lost his life to COVID, and that is a unique loss in that they're in the hospital isolated and their world is in complete turmoil and people are fighting about policies and vaccinations. I remember having this feeling of people who are trying to protect their income, and rightfully so. They want to protect their income and their right to get a haircut. And I just felt like if you were to be in the position that my husband was in right now and you were about to lose your life, none of this would matter. You can rebuild a business. You can rebuild your life. You can build everything back up. Even if you were to lose everything and lose your job, you can never get your life back. That was really like neon lights for me because of the way I experienced my loss too. It's never worth losing hope because I'm still here. I can still do something. And especially watching my parents go through various financial difficulties throughout my childhood, you can always find a way out. What's the worst that can happen? You try again, you try something different. You can always find another path to a solution, whereas that's the only problem with no solution.
When you were saying that about your parents, I remember when my husband and I first got married, we both lost our jobs in our first year of marriage. It was like, okay, now what do we do? We're coming up to our 1 year anniversary. We haven't got through the qualifying period yet for unemployment while looking for jobs. It was fall of the year. So for our 1 year anniversary, we picked apples for a living. We harvested apples for the orchard. I surprised my husband. I knew how to drive a tractor, and he went, "What?" So the city girl. But that's how we made our money, how we survived for 2 weeks. We picked apples. When you say there's always something you can do in situations, there's always something other than, as you say, death. Once you've gone through that, you realize there's always a way to get around.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that is the number one limiting belief. I have this really secure job, or I know what I'm doing here. If I go over there, then I'm going to lose everything. And what's going to happen if they fire me? What if? I love to run it through. Like, what if? Let's explore that. What's going to happen? Oh, I guess I'll just get another job. Right? Like,
A 2 year old that keeps asking, why? Why?
I am like that child.
I did think it. What if?
Yeah.
The worst
Yeah, but I love what you did is that like you answer the question of how. This is our situation. How do we overcome this now? And I think that's the theme in everything that you're talking about is coming out of that why me type of thinking into more empowered, well, how do I build what I want? How do I overcome this? And for me, it's always like instead of like why me, why is important too, but it also comes with judgment, victimhood, and it's also like what is it about this that is challenging as opposed to the why question. What is your why? Like what moves you is another way to ask that. What inspires you?
I think the whole thing is as long as it doesn't become why me all the that you don't take it as a negative. I could have asked when I got Crohn's because I was only married 4 months when I was diagnosed. So I could have said, why me? Like, why did that happen to me? I went to the doctor figuring, okay, they'll put me on drugs for 6 weeks and I'm healthy. And so I remember telling my husband that I've now got this disease that they cannot cure. And him going, okay, so we just got married 4 months ago. Are you going to die already on me? Like that. He was so blunt about it and just so forthright about it. I went, yeah, good question. Like I hadn't thought to ask that, right? So yeah, that was sort of an eye-opener for me because I had to at that point decide how was I going to handle this disease that I didn't know anything about. But why me wasn't going to help.
Yeah. Well, I love what you said. Every action starts with a decision. You decided, and that's what pulled you through from that point forward. I'm sure that informed all your decisions moving forward. All your actions were driven by this decision that you're going to handle it a certain way. So, what did you decide?
I decided that I would just meet everything head on as much as I could. When I was diagnosed, they didn't know much about my disease. So even the medical profession couldn't help me too much. I just went, okay, so you take one day at a time and move forward and you live as if you're going to live forever and you're going to be fine and you will do whatever you want to do. Against judgments of doctors, I had a child. I went to my specialist yearly, and in between I had a child, and I walked in with the baby and he goes, what did you do? I said, oh, I decided to have a baby. Well, I didn't decide. It was not quite that easy, but anyway, he goes, well, that wasn't a good thing to do. I said, I feel great.
Ah,
So it wasn't that they said no, but they said that's probably not a really good thing, and at that time they didn't know, could I pass it on to, sort of thing. But that's how I approach everything. We just take another step. We'll take another step and you get through it. And try and do it with a smile on your face as much as you can, because that makes everything easier.
well, you really wanted a baby, and so you feel great. So much of our energy is driven by how we feel as opposed to the diagnosis or the circumstances that we're under. It's about how do we feel about this? You pursued what you wanted, which it sounds like you wanted to have a family. And of course you
10
felt
years.
great because
10 years. They kept saying, no, you can't have one. I went, oh, yeah, well, okay. I mean, I'm very blessed. I have children. My husband was married before. So I have two stepchildren, which I don't think of them that way normally, but that's their term, right? And then we adopted. at birth. So my son that's now living with me, he's actually was adopted at birth. And then surprise, surprise, I did have one on my own. I say I got kids every way you can get kids.
That's awesome. I have kids everywhere.
Don't limit yourself. Keep the possibilities open. You know,
Yeah.
I wanted a family.
Yeah. It's so funny because I keep hearing you say keep moving forward. I don't know if that's because I just watched this movie or if I watched the movie because I was going to talk to you and it was meant to stand out to me. But I watched this movie with my daughter because I saw some like reel about it. I was like, this sounds like it has a very powerful message I would love for her to take away. Keep moving forward was the family motto, and the movie was called, I think it was called Meet the Robinsons. And that was the family motto. And it started with the father of the family. And I don't want to give away for anybody that wants to watch it, but it's a kid's movie. But what I remember my daughter took out of it was keep making mistakes. And it's interesting that she said that because I definitely see a theme in her way of approaching things. Is like when she makes a mistake, she almost like curls back in shame, and she reframed it in that moment about, oh, it's okay to make mistakes. It's like, let's celebrate our mistakes and keep moving forward through them. It's just how we learn. And no matter how much I would say that to her, it didn't really like sink in till she watched this movie. But the theme of the story was that he would just say to himself, keep moving forward. And he was adopted, but he lived his whole life in an orphanage and he was a child inventor and all this stuff. And when I hear you say it, it is about not staying in the bad news, not staying in the circumstance. For people that are trying to decide on transitioning career or next level, it's like, okay, so what if you fail? You just keep moving forward through that, right? And it's like, um,
The thing is, when you are transitioning, it doesn't matter with what, it's not always easy. When I was studying to be a gemologist, I battling my disease at the same time, sailed through my first year, no problem, wrote my exams. Back then, the exams were held once a year. You failed that, you got to wait another whole year
oh,
to rewrite your exam for your professional designation. 2 weeks before my diploma exam, I ended up in the hospital with my disease. Now I've got my right arm strapped to a board with an IV in it, so I can't use my writing hand. And I'm one of those, I like to write my answers to learn. Like that's how I learn. So I'm sitting in the hospital and I've got all my books around me, and my doctor comes in and looks at me and goes, what the heck are you doing? You're supposed to be resting. Your disease requires you to rest. And I said, but I have an exam in 2 weeks and I want to be ready for it. Well, of course I wasn't ready for it. And I actually failed that exam. I passed the practical part of it, but I failed the theory. It didn't stop me. I just rewrote the next year and passed. But then when I was teaching, I told this story to some of my students. And my students looked at me, pardon me, you failed, but look at you now. And I said, well, that's because you just keep going. And I said, failure only means it was your first attempt at learning it, because they get so uptight over it and say, do it again. It's the big deal. So yes, I was upset at the time. And do I want to rewrite it? My exam? Oh my God, they're so hard. No, I don't. But yes, I do, because I want what I want. So it's not always easy.
thank you for sharing that. I actually also failed my my first board certified coaching certification exam. I remember being so frustrated and crushed by it. I think I missed it by one question, maybe two. And I was just like so infuriated. Like, I can't believe this. This is the problem with not experiencing failure in your life, right? Because then when you do, it's even harder to kind of overcome it. And I remember the mindset shift for me, and I find that I go back to this many times, especially like marathon training, anything that's a long-term goal is this is God's way of asking me, how bad do you want it?
Which is great. I love that. Just this year with my coaching, I spent 13 weeks in my bed. I had two different lung viruses, followed by pneumonia, followed with a cracked rib during the pneumonia. I actually coughed so much that I cracked a rib. And so, yeah, I was 13 weeks where I couldn't sit at my computer. I couldn't move enough. I was coughing constantly. And so, how bad did I want to keep moving forward in my coaching career? How bad did I want it? How bad did I want to write a book? How bad, And so, yeah, for sure, it is all about your mindset. If you cannot get your mindset, it doesn't matter where you are or what you're doing. You have to not just want it enough, but you have to have your mind open to it enough. And a part of it is you have to work towards it. It's not just saying, I want this. It's also, as you said before, how do you get there?
Mhm.
Okay, well, that path didn't quite work. Can I shift the path and change to still get to the end result I want? And sometimes it's not necessarily the career or the job or whatever, it's what it means at the other end. What I had to think about was what I want my life to be like. So, how can I get that lifestyle I want with what I know? And the coaching was something that my students kept asking me for when I didn't have time to do it. And so that sort of fell at me. I kept having all these people asking, why not do that now? It's a different type of teaching. That's all.
When I was first starting to think about leaving corporate, I found this podcast, Why Not Now? What I loved about everyone she had on the podcast was their why not now moment. I was looking for that why not now moment. I wanted to get to the point where I could be like, yeah, why not now? Why keep waiting? Why keep putting it off? Why keep postponing? Why not now? How do I make now the time for the thing that it's really calling out to me? I keep getting that nagging feeling that I'm meant to be doing something different. This isn't working anymore. And it is like, why not now? Why do we have to do this later? Why not now? Why can't we make this work now the same way we would later? I'm only getting older. I can't tell the future. Why do I assume it's not necessarily going to be better in the future? People think about their corporate jobs being this secure place, but there's so many stories of people getting laid off when there was an acquisition, and there's no one that could have predicted that. So we don't know the future, and it's more like you said, paying attention and asking why not now,
Well,
right?
and for people closer to my age, I hear so many in their late 40s, 50s going, oh, I'll just wait till I retire. I'll just wait till I retire. And I went,
Yeah.
you may not make it to retire. Like, why are you waiting to do it after you retire? By the time you retire, your body has changed so much in that 10, 15 years that you may not be able to physically do it. It was always, oh, wait till the golden years. Yeah, well, the golden years are a lot of doctors. And it's like some weeks I go, when did I find time to work? I don't ever really think I'm going to wait to do something now. I mean, yes, I have Crohn's, etc., but genetically, the women in my family live long. So I could live into my 90s, no problem genetically. But so much else can happen. I just go, okay, I'll get a passport for another 10 years because at this moment in my life, I can still travel.
Yeah.
I'm still able to do what I want to do. And will it last for 10 years? Don't know, but I'll plan for it to last that long.
Yeah. Exactly. Like we can't know the future, but we can plan for the best. And the thing is, when you lose someone unexpectedly at a younger age than you expect to lose them, that's when you realize, why am I putting off living my life? Like, I'm alive now. Am I really living though? At least for me, the answer was no. I would have had a lot of regrets had it been me. And when I say that, I'm referring to 2 years prior to when we lost Juan, when we lost his two best friends. They had a daughter and a son. The two friends that died in the car accident, they were my daughter's age, and they were both my husband's age. And it was like they were just going to work that morning, and they happened to work together. And it was like, I could go to work tomorrow and not be here. And it was just like, what was this all for? If I could just lose everything in an instant, I would have wished it was different. And I think when the good time for that comes is such a lie that we tell ourselves to not step into courage and do the thing that we're scared to do. And I'm not minimizing that these are scary things to do, right? To leave your job or change careers or spend the money on the big trip when you're trying to save, and all these things are risks, but we make these risks from a place of hope and faith and joy rather than a place of fear, is how I look at
And
it.
I think that's the difference, especially with people that have lost their partners or someone very close to you early in your life, or even like myself, a little bit later, but still really way too early. You don't make your decisions from fear anymore. It's not that you don't have fears, but you don't make your decisions from that place.
When you're working with clients, what are some of the fears that they have in their minds when you're trying to coach them through a process? What are some maybe limiting beliefs or challenges that they face
Well, some of the
trying to
things,
overcome?
yeah, as a jewelry appraiser, there's, I think, three things that I probably deal with the most. One is finding their client. I mean, a lot of industries you can get referrals, but how many people actually talk about taking their jewelry to a jewelry appraiser to have it looked at? It's just not a conversation starter, right? So referrals is not normally the way you get, unless you're good at what you do. I've had referrals. I had word of mouth for my whole career. In 22 years, I rarely did any advertising. It was all from people getting to know me and getting to trust me. But understanding who your client is and where their client is, that's one area that I really help jewelry appraisers understand. A lot of, especially new ones, will go, oh, well, it's anybody. No, it's not. There are certain niches that they have to look at and understand what they really want to do as an appraiser, and helping them understand that and what kind of appraisal is good for this client or that client and who is that client. Understanding that it's a concept that a lot of people don't understand. Once you do, it makes your job a whole lot easier, and it makes your marketing and your talking to your client much easier. The other aspect is, as appraisers, we are educators a lot of the time because there's so much misinformation out there. An example is you have someone come in and they're bringing in great grandma's ring from the, early 1900s, or it's got to be real. It's got to be natural stones because it's great grandma's, right? Well, no, it doesn't, because we've had synthetics and glass since the 1800s. So things like that, most people don't realize. So you're gently educating at the same time. If you do it from knowledge and not just learning how to do it without crushing their, oh my God, it's my great grandma's, that's a skill you learn as well. And then it's a cultural thing. And because we deal in our industry with almost every culture, and understanding that their jewelry tells a different story for them. You have to honor those stories and cultures. It's not just learning about jewelry and gems, it's learning about cultures in order to be able to talk to people respectfully in every area. For me, that was the three things that I am always talking to my clients about. And then add to it that it is a legal profession. And so they always have to be doing a lot of work, a lot of research, and documenting it well, so that if for any reason it has to go through a court or an insurance claim, you can defend exactly what you put down. Sometimes people like to take shortcuts, and you can't do that as a jewelry appraiser. Those are the things that I coach them on, how to approach those things and how to understand all of that information. For me, my niche was, given my background, I liked dealing with the estate. I loved the stories of the jewelry from the people that are bringing them in. We'd be sorting through the jewelry. So I had an idea what I was going to be dealing with. And they'd see, oh, yeah, oh, my mom always wore that when she went out dancing. I loved those stories because it tells the story of that person's life through their jewelry.
I am sure you felt like everybody must want to hear the family stories of their gems, but it's so unique to who you are and what calls to you and your experience. And so that passion led you to your unique niche. What do you think are some typical objections to niching down?
People don't understand you can have more than one niche. Niching helps you know where to find your clients if you understand who they are. Did I walk away from young couples getting engaged and doing their diamond rings for them? No. But how I would talk to them would be totally different to me talking and marketing to somebody that's in their 40s or 50s and have lost their mom and dad and now have to deal with the estate, because now I'm talking to someone that may be going through grief still.
Mm.
And they're having to go through stuff that they don't have a clue, and they're going to trust me to have the knowledge to deal with it all. Whereas with my clients that were getting engaged, I loved hearing the stories about how they proposed and all that stuff, and how sometimes the ring got to them and those kinds of stories. So for me, the stories were always fascinating, but people don't understand that niching down helps you find your clients much easier.
Yeah, I know even in product management, sometimes this was a challenge. And as a coach, I found it to be challenging for me. It's so much easier when you're not the product. So I think back to, okay, as a product manager, I was in the med tech industry and we served dermatologists and plastic surgeons. And we served not only dermatologists in general, but even niche down further. There were the aesthetic dermatologists versus the medical dermatology field. My product concept was opening up a new market for us, the retail market. When I brought the new product vision to the table as a potential way of gaining more access to it, the retail market that was kind of trying to use what was already out there to leverage in the retail sector. When you're talking about skincare, it's so different. The client is so different that the product needed to be so different. And it was a challenge to present that in a way that the owner or the engineers working on these products for so long, like, hey, this is a very, very different client, and this product needs to be specific for them because they have very unique needs and they have very unique ways of engaging with even their client, because there's a B2B business, right? And they engage with their client very different. It's a fast-paced environment, and they are owned by these major corporations that want to have visibility onto all these different locations. And you paint the picture and it's so different. And yet a little part of the business owner wants to, like, yes, but we have such great, interesting tools that they could use also. Or now that we have this, we can give it to the medical practice. But it's like, once you start to get unclear on who is this particular product for, it is hard to serve that client in the best way, because it's like when you try to be the same thing for everyone, you're no longer serving anyone, right? And I say that for boundaries too. It's like you have to be who you are, when we talk about being authentic and investing our time in the things that matter most to us. Because if you try to do everything and be everything to everyone, you end up washing down who you are. You end up not doing anything well because you're stripped so thin. But the same thing applies to our products, to our businesses. And it is hard to say, but I want to help them too. It's like, yes, we can, but you have to do it differently and have that separation so you can do it well for each of them individually. This is very relevant to any industry, any business, and it is a challenge to overcome. What would you say was an aha moment that you had with a client where this exercise might have been really helpful for them to really identify, I can really niche down to this particular client and that is going to serve me? It did.
I think one of the things was asking them what kind of client they enjoy working with the most, because you want to be able to enjoy what you're doing. And as an appraiser, our bread and butter is diamond. It was, for most of my career, was still diamonds, because there's always somebody getting engaged. For me, it's like, okay, I saw a diamond, I've seen a diamond. And that's not really true, because every diamond is different. However, as an appraiser, once you've been going through and you look at diamonds, they're colorless. I'm sorry. I mean, I wear them, but it became almost routine for me. And that wasn't what I wanted in my life. I loved the stories like, how one gentleman found me, and he needed the appraisal done because he was flying from Canada to Texas to ask for his girlfriend's hand in marriage from the father. She lived on the west coast of Canada. So this appraisal and ring was going from, southern Ontario to Texas to Vancouver area, and I'm going, oh, that's fascinating. Okay, you got to tell me what she says. And I was joking, right? But he did. He sent me a little note. Yeah, she said yes. I said, well, I'm pretty sure before you laughed, right? But for me, that wasn't who I really wanted to deal with all the time. I really enjoyed and understood the people that were in the estate. They're closer in age to myself. So I understood their concerns about leaving their jewelry, their parents' jewelry. They didn't have a clue what's good, what's not. They have to trust me. So just having talks with them and helping them through that and being able to talk about the jewelry and what it meant to them and what it meant to their family. I enjoyed that as much as looking at the jewelry, which usually was quite fascinating compared to a diamond ring. Even if it was costume jewelry can be great fun. So yeah.
It is about where do you see yourself actually enjoying your work the most? It goes back to how you feel is going to impact how you show up. I love that. The other thing you said that also applies to all careers and industries at the core of it is emotional intelligence. There is so much understanding people, communication, and understanding influence and what drives and motivates people. It's the ability to have empathy for your client, put yourself in their shoes and understand their desires and what they ultimately believe in and what they feel. And I think that is another skill that is so important for any industry and so needed and overlooked sometimes when we think about our careers. You get the tests and the certificates and the knowledge. These are all great hard skills to have that get us there, but the core soft skills are what lead to our ultimate success.
For sure. They do. If you don't have that, you're not going to last long. People aren't going to refer you. You're not going to have people coming back.
Thank you so much for sitting with me today, Karen. I loved this conversation. I think a lot of people will get a lot out of it. If someone is really resonating with what you're talking about and wants to work with you or is interested in the gem/jewelry appraising business, how might they connect with you?
Well, my email is thelanguageofgems@gmail.com. My website is Jewelry Appraisers Coach.com or thelanguageofgems.com. I have two websites because I still do teach a bit of gemology. That's probably the best three ways of getting me. I am on Facebook, I am on Instagram, I am on LinkedIn as well. So any of those, you can find me under my name.
And what is the title of your upcoming book? Did you nail that down yet?
Yeah, I have one. I think it is about the business side of appraising. And so it is for the appraisers. Now, originally it was from diploma to dusk. Now I think the main part of it will say from startup to success. And then I'm not sure what I'm going to do as the subtitle on that.
Well, congratulations. I'm sure you'll be announcing it on your website. Thank you for connecting with our listeners. I really appreciate your time.
This was great. I enjoyed it.
Thank you for tuning into today's episode of Courage and Purpose. I hope today's insights inspired you to take bold action and align your life and career with what truly matters to you. If you're ready to dive deeper, I invite you to download my free Action Indicator Assessment, a powerful tool to help you uncover what's holding you back and take the next step towards clarity and confidence. Just visit www.lifeonpurpose.coach/action indicator to get started today. If you found value in today's episode, please subscribe, leave a review, and share this podcast with someone who could use a little extra courage on their journey. Until next time, stay true to your purpose, lead with courage, and keep thriving. I'll see you in the next episode.